Emmerdale's Cain Dingle realizes he's made a big mistake tonight, as the police warn him off from any further meddling in Moira's case. Has he made everything worse by putting pressure on Beowulf? Cain knows that Bear's recollections could hold the key to proving Moira's innocence in the modern slavery scandal, and he hasn't been shy when it comes to pointing this out. Sadly, encouraging Bear to speak up was clearly a step too far in the police's eyes. Last night, Bear tried to clear Moira's name by insisting that she wasn't involved in the illegal activities at Celia's farm. Just when it seemed like the police might listen, Bear slipped up by revealing that Cain had directly asked him to make this clear. Cain's intervention came across as intimidation of a crucial witness, and with Bear so vulnerable at the moment, the optics didn't look good. In tonight's episode, Sl1 tries to track down Cain at the garage. Cain isn't around, so Matty Barton asks for an update on whether Bear's confession in Ray Walters' murder case will change things for Moira. His confession has nothing to do with your mum's charges, Sl1 replies. I get you're frustrated, but you don't want to end up like Cain Dingle. His frustrations spilled over with Mr. Howelson the other day, and it could be seen as intimidation. Although it's unusual to hear it on screen, Edward Howelson is Bear's real name. Sl1 adds, that's what I needed a word about. So you might want to tell him this. If he crosses that line again, it won't be a quiet word. It'll be a formal warning. Later, Cain visits Moira in prison. He glumly breaks the bad news that Bear's confession hasn't helped her at all. In fact, things are worse after the police's stern reaction to Cain's meddling. What does the future hold for Moira now? Meanwhile, tonight's episode also sees Mandy Dingle return to the village after her time away in Ireland. In real life, Lisa Riley, who plays Mandy, took time away from filming to compete on ITV's I'm a Celebrity late last year. Mandy arrives back to chaos, with the police piling pressure on Paddy Dingle and Dylan Penders amid the fallout from Bear's confession. Is there any way she can help to fix the situation? Cain had always believed that action was better than inaction. If there was a problem, you faced it head-on. If someone you loved was in trouble, you fought hard. And right now, Moira was in the fight of her life. Accused in the modern slavery scandal connected to Celia's farm, Moira's reputation and freedom were on the line. Cain refused to believe she had any involvement in the illegal operations. He knew her, he trusted her, and he would not let her rot behind bars for something she hadn't done. The key, he was certain, lay with Beowulf. Bear's fragile recollections could prove that Moira wasn't involved in Celia's criminal activities. Cain had convinced himself that if Bear simply told the truth, clearly and firmly, everything would fall into place. But Cain had pushed too hard. Bear's slip-up. The previous night had seemed promising. Bear had bravely tried to clear Moira's name, insisting to police that she had nothing to do with the illegal labor at Celia's farm. For a fleeting moment, it looked like the tide might turn. Then came the mistake. In an effort to explain himself, Bear admitted that Cain had asked him directly to make his position clear. The room shifted. Suddenly, what looked like a heartfelt confession felt like something else entirely. Intimidation. With Bear vulnerable and clearly struggling, Cain's involvement cast a long shadow. It didn't matter that his intentions were protective. The optics were damning, and the police noticed. Sl1's warning. The next morning, Sl1 arrived at the garage looking for Cain. Cain wasn't there, perhaps deliberately. Instead, Matty Barton faced the officer's cool expression. Matty demanded answers. Would Bear's confession in Ray Walters' murder case help Moira? Would it change anything? Sl1 didn't hesitate. His confession has nothing to do with your mum's charges, she said firmly. I get you're frustrated, but you don't want to end up like Cain Dingle. Matty stiffened. Sl1 continued, her tone steady but edged with warning. His frustrations spilled over with Mr. Howelson the other day, and it could be seen as intimidation. Hearing Bear's real name, Edward Howelson, sounded jarring in the garage. Too official. Too serious. That's what I needed a word about, Sl1 added. So you might want to tell him this. If he crosses that line again, it won't be a quiet word. It'll be a formal warning. The implication was clear. Cain had already stepped over the line once. There wouldn't be another chance. Realization. When Cain finally learned what Sl1 had said, a rare flicker of doubt crossed his face. Had he made things worse? He'd believed he was helping, that pushing Bear to speak up would strengthen Moira's case. But instead of helping, he'd undermined the credibility of the one witness who might have made a difference. Cain wasn't used to feeling powerless. But this wasn't a fight he could win with threats or force. For the first time, he wondered if his instinct to take control had backfired spectacularly. A prison visit. Later that day, Cain walked into the prison visiting room. Moira sat waiting, her shoulders squared but her eyes tired. She managed a faint smile when she saw him. Cain didn't return it. He sat down slowly. It hasn't helped, he admitted. Bear's confession, it's done nothing. If anything, it's worse. Moira's expression fell. Cain explained about Chen's warning, about how his involvement made it look like he'd pressured Bear, about how the police now viewed him as interfering. Moira closed her eyes briefly. You were just trying to help, she said quietly. Yeah, Cain replied. And I've probably made it harder. There was no anger in her voice, only worry. For once, Cain had no plan. No scheme. No next move. Just the crushing weight of consequences. The pressure mounts. Back in the village, the fallout rippled outward. Police attention didn't stop at Cain. Paddy Dingle and Dylan Penders found themselves under scrutiny amid the chaos following Bear's confession. Questions were asked. Statements were taken. The atmosphere felt suffocating. The Dingles were used to trouble. But this felt different. This was official. And it wasn't going away. Mandy's return. Into this turmoil walked Mandy Dingle. After weeks away in Ireland, Mandy breezed back into the village with her trademark confidence, only to be met with chaos. The laughter faded quickly as she learned what had happened. Moira in prison. Cain under police warning. Paddy stressed and defensive. Dylan dragged into the mess. Mandy's expression hardened. What have I missed? She asked, though she already sensed the answer was everything. Mandy had always been dramatic, emotional, and fiercely loyal. But beneath the glitter and sass was a sharp mind. She could read a situation, and she knew this one needed calm, not chaos. For once, she didn't launch into theatrics. She listened. Cracks in the armor. Cain, meanwhile, struggled with something unfamiliar. Guilt. He replayed his conversation with Bear over and over. Had he leaned too close? Raised his voice? Made it sound like an order rather than a request? He'd meant to empower Bear. Instead, he'd potentially discredited him. The thought that his actions might keep Moira behind bars was almost unbearable. Cain Dingle prided himself on being the protector. Now he risked being the liability. Moira's strength. In prison, Moira refused to crumble. She reminded Cain that the truth would come out, eventually. We'll find another way, she insisted. But even she couldn't deny the damage done. The police now viewed Cain as volatile. Any further involvement could jeopardize her case entirely. For the first time, Moira asked him to step back. That request cut deeper than any accusation. Cain stepping back meant surrendering control, trusting a system he didn't believe in. But if staying involved made things worse, what choice did he have? Mandy's plan. Mandy wasn't one to sit idle. After assessing the situation, she realized the family needed strategy, not confrontation. You lot charging around like bulls isn't helping, she told Cain bluntly. He bristled, but didn't argue, because she wasn't wrong. Mandy suggested they focus on gathering proper legal support. Real evidence. Something concrete that didn't rely on fragile testimony. For once, Cain listened. Maybe muscle wasn't the answer. Maybe patience was. The bigger question. As night fell over the village, uncertainty lingered. Had Cain ruined Moira's chances? Would the police escalate their warning into charges of intimidation? And could Bear withstand the pressure of being at the center of it all? The modern slavery scandal wasn't just a legal battle. It was tearing through families, friendships, and loyalties. Cain stood outside the garage, staring into the dark. He had always believed that love meant fighting harder than anyone else. But tonight, he realized something painful. Sometimes fighting too hard can cost you everything. What comes next? DC Chen's warning hung in the air. One more step over the line, and Cain would face formal consequences. Moira's future remained uncertain. Mandy's return offered hope, perhaps a steadier hand in the storm. But the damage was done. Cain Dingle had tried to protect the woman he loved. Instead, he may have handed the police exactly what they needed to tighten their case. And in a village where secrets rarely stay buried, the next revelation could change everything all over again.